just look at this thing. All right, this is a headline from one of the major papers in my state. And you might have seen this headline around the place. I think a UK place picked it up. I think maybe some American places wanted to talk about it, some streamers or something, because I do remember seeing it. But I'm going to tell you something. I live in this state, and I was going to get the jump on it, but I had some personal matters to attend to and I couldn't do it. What had happened is the Friday before this was due to come out, it was a sponsored advert on Facebook. They were happy about it. They were spruiking, oh, next Monday in the West Australian, next Monday on Perth Now, because they wanted a lot of people to get behind this and they wanted the controversies, the clickbait, they wanted it all guns a-blazing. And is it any wonder? It is quite a controversial cover. So you see a little kid who, he's awesome, he's going to have thousands of people looking at him, he's got this massive acting gig or whatever they classified this as, except he's going to be the domestic violence kid. So the comments range from, oh my God, domestic violence bad, to, oh my God, you've got this kid on the cover, that poor kid, to, what the hell are you talking about? There's plenty of violence coming from both sides. What the hell are you trying to do here? Because looking at the byline, what does that say? They want to address toxic masculinity. And if you've seen any of my other videos, go back, I don't know when, but I've got a couple of videos discussing it. I don't believe there's such thing. And I believe that the feminazis came up with this to make us just look at men and hate their behavior. The things that they list as toxic to do with males are the things that make males men, things that make them pillars of society and people that we look up to protect us and to ensure the running of our society in some aspects. So some of the things that they like to say that toxic masculinity is remaining stoic. So you don't want to bawl your eyes out every 5 minutes because you dropped an ice cream cone, you're not 3 years old. That's just not a male thing, that's a female thing too. There's a time and place for that kind of stuff. You don't do that in business. You're particularly interested in somebody, you don't know them too well. You want to be like, hey, how you doing? Not, hey, how you... That's a turn off. It doesn't matter if you're a male or a female. So I failed to see how that's one of their points. They say things like engaging in risky behavior that might cause harm to oneself or others, and engaging in unhealthy behavior like smoking or drinking. Like that isn't everybody on the face of the freaking earth. This is like the whole climate change thing when they change the words global warming to climate change now so they can blame everything on that. Oh my God, it's too hot. Climate change. Oh my goodness, it's so cold. Climate change. Oh my God, there's evidence of arson in this particular region. Climate change. Shut up, bigot. How dare you think it was anything else but? People that need help in any capacity, male, female, whatever you want to call yourself, can have the problems of substance abuse. It's not necessarily toxic males that are doing it. Championing heterosexuality as the unalterable norm. I'm not going to touch that. Being dominant. Of course they're dominant. Men are dominant. They're physically bigger, stronger. They walk into a room and they are bigger than the female component of that room. Get over it. It just is what it is. Not being a feminist ally. Bitch, I'm not a feminist ally. Sit down. Not engaging in household chores and caregiving. You know what? I did that about 10 minutes ago to someone else in the other room. So there's that. The attitude that's predominant when these kind of things happen or are put forward for the public to consume is like climate change, is like allyship and whatever, is the fact of, well, don't you want society to be good? Don't you want someone to be safe? Don't you think that this would be a good idea in schools to make sure that domestic violence doesn't continue? Well, see, the thing about that is I think it's your job to teach your children how to act and prepare them for society. I don't think it's the state's job, and I don't think the state should have the right to tell your son who hasn't done anything, who hasn't even thought about acting out like this, that he's wrong and he's in the wrong and he's a bad person because of it. So no, I don't agree with these kinds of programs in school if they're directed at men or boys in general, but they should be directed, if they're going to be taught, at everyone. That includes the holier-than-thou piece of shit with blue hair that's probably teaching them this. Well, being from this state and actually holding a physical version of the paper and taking pictures of the interior of it, aside from this coming out, I did notice it was one in a series of articles that depicted women being beat up or women experiencing domestic violence, even down to having CCTV/video footage from inside one of their homes and seeing her being thrown on the bed and basically punched and whatever else at the time. My heart does go out in that direction. I sympathize with women and men who are victims of domestic violence because, yes, I have been there also. So this isn't one of those things where I'm resentful that, we should not believe all women, which I don't think we should, but it's not one of those things. It's you need to put it in perspective. Violence comes from both sides, so women and men, and often women tend to use implements and they, because they don't have big enough fists. They're not as big as their counterpart or their boyfriend. So you see in the news sometimes, you'll find that they used a baseball bat, or they used a frying pan, or they used something to burn the person with. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it and to look at it is because it's not just about the domestic violence side of things. Although this place, nothing really happens here, so they have a theme. So what they'll do is they'll pick a topic and they'll run with it for the whole week. And that means news sources from both sides of the political aisle and different channels on TV and different publications will come out with an article or 6 on the same type of things. And this so happens to be domestic violence this last week that's just happened. I couldn't help but notice that it also kind of bleeds into something else that's coming down the pike, and that is, of course, the quote-unquote sweeping gun law reforms for WA, because apparently they're not strict enough, even though they're some of the strictest in the world. So oftentimes when this kind of stuff happens, when there's a snowball effect of a certain subject, you look at the news they're not really reporting on, or the little lines or the small print they're pushing through as well. And they just happen to mention this. And the way they were talking about it was something that if you are a reasonable person, and you'd like to think that you are, that kind of makes sense. So you have mental health background checks in America, okay? And so here they're saying that in this legislation, part of the new reforms is they're going to make it more of an issue for those that have a violence restraining order against them at the moment. So if you have a current one, you can't own a firearm, and there are bans, I think, extending certain years in the future, depending on how serious your offense was or what's going on with you and your ex-wife or ex-husband or whatever. And it makes sense, right? Wouldn't you want the best for people? Wouldn't you want them to be safe? However, it gets you by the balls on the emotional level. And when these reforms come through, they're going to be thousands of pages long, and they want you to just go, yep, tick, 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 we support this, because they've got your heartstrings. This is going to be one of those things where when it finally comes down and people say, oh, we're passing this new legislation, it's to do with domestic violence victims, it's protecting them, because you can't have a firearm if you have a violence restraining order, and that's all you as a decent person need to hear in order to support it. As far as I know, there's no forum, there's no submission of thoughts or questions or anything on the matter. It just is what it is, and they're putting this through without anybody's okay, because again, you'll be okay with this. Putting another clause in the Firearms Act that they're rewriting to do with domestic violence is something that we can all get behind and support. However, it's just mentioned in conjunction with all these domestic violence articles that have come out, and we're expected to just go, yep, that's cool, 2 lines in an article. We're expected not to ask questions. And I have questions about these reforms. I have questions about these domestic violence programs they're hoping to put into schools, because yeah, it kind of is a good idea, I guess, but you're aiming it at males and calling them toxic. Male children in a public school that just put there to try and get an education. Not to be pawns used in a woke agenda pushing virtue signal that won't be delivered the way taxpayers might hope it would be. I don't know, you want to float that in front of the taxpayers that are footing the bill for that? And before anybody thinks that someone is just getting bent out of shape having seen that cover because it was meant to be controversial, we all get that. There's even an editor letter within the paper written by a male editor talking about toxic masculinity. I underlined, someone put it in here somewhere. This is what men do that are beta, that are trying to get laid? As we know, there's a definite agenda. I just didn't think it would hit WA quite so hard and fast. Men bad. Guns bad. And you are bad if you don't support it with no questions asked. Don't want to be one of those people that's asking you to sub and like, but if you feel like commenting or liking, that would help me out. It'll give me the power to do more of these episodes.